Hello and welcome to the Pulse of Africa Roundup, your premier destination for in-depth analysis of the continent's most pressing current affairs. In each episode, we dive into the major issues shaping Africa today, offering expert insights, critical perspectives, and thoughtful discussions. Today, our focus turns to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's recent diplomatic visit to France and Italy. I am Gamachisa Mandira, and my colleague Habib Mohammed will bring the analysis to you, and stay with us. Hello, Habib. How was the week?
It was a wonderful week.
So, Prime Minister Abiy has, of course, been visiting, some countries in Europe. He started, of course, with France. And can you give us some insights into that?
Okay, yeah. So, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed actually made an announced visit to Paris and met with French President Emmanuel Macron. This part of the Prime Minister's visit to Europe is Abiy Ahmed's broader European tour to bolster Ethiopia's international cooperation, especially, cementing its ties with the European countries as well. And upon arrival, the Prime Minister was received by a welcoming ceremony in the Musée de l'Armée, which is one of the oldest military museums that France possesses right now. And Prime Minister Abiy also visited the restored Notre Dame Cathedral, Paris. Paris is one of the historical cities. It's also the seat of the UNESCO. So France really advanced in terms of revitalizing all this kind of historical heritage as well. So it has been also assisting Ethiopia in this regard. So the Prime Minister has been warmly welcomed to visit all these kind of historical sites that France really possessed in Paris and around Paris.
By the way, we need to go back to history and see how Ethiopia and France, just began their relationship throughout, these centuries. If we begin with, the colonial era, in those days, when Europeans were scrambling for land in Africa, of course, France was, just one of the countries that gave recognition as Ethiopia fought the Italian forces, the invading forces. And ever since, France's cooperation with Ethiopia has been, growing steadily. And throughout, the different administrations in Ethiopia, it lasted, continuously without interruption. If we take, the cooperation of the two countries, which began, just in the colonial era, the railway, it was
built by the French.
Exactly, it was built by the French.
Exactly.
And leave alone, just during that time, if you have it, just right these days, it is one of the extraordinary things that you can have.
Exactly.
And it was, dominantly backed by the French. Okay,
exactly.
And that shows, just the commitment France has, relationship with Ethiopia. And what's beautiful about, the relationship between these two countries, the French, they focus, to cultural element.
Exactly. In addition to this historical relation between Ethio-France relations, so the current, and we've been mentioning how these chronological orders, the chronology of the visit of both countries from Ethiopia to France, France to Ethiopia. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's several visits to France reflects all these kind of deepening ties between Ethiopia and France relation. In October 2018, Prime Minister Abiy made the first working visit to Paris since he assumed office upon the invitation of President Emmanuel Macron. And the two leaders declared to establish a special partnership focusing on economic, education, and cultural and defense cooperation. So the two leaders remain up to that point until now, because we've been mentioning the current visit of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to Paris. In March 2019, French President visited Ethiopia again. Yeah. So French President Emmanuel Macron made his first official visit to Ethiopia. That's on March 2019. At this time, both leaders sign multilateral cultural cooperation agreements. As you've said, this is this time that Emmanuel Macron pledged to support Ethiopia worth 25 million euros in support for the construction of the Rokion Church of Ethiopia and the National Palace of Ethiopia. So which is one of the great assets that France has already developed, this kind of knowledge, know-how in terms of developing historical heritage. So such partnership also enhanced through the previously agreed cultural cooperation agreements between Ethiopia and France. In February 2023, Prime Minister Abiy visited Paris to meet with President Macron, and the discussion centered on revitalizing economic ties and attracting French investments in Ethiopia's strategic sectors like energy. That also helped Prime Minister Abiy to step forward, re-engaging with international partners. And in 2023, Partnership in Global Financial Summit was held. So it was hosted by Emmanuel Macron. So Prime Minister Abiy also attended that summit, the 2023 summit. It was a new global financial pact. So it was organized in Paris. So during the summit, Abiy emphasized the need for robust financial support mechanisms to address challenges faced by low-income countries, especially African countries. So the global financial architecture should be changed in a way, or should be aligned in a way that should benefit the African countries as well. So he also appreciated France's initiative in convening the summit in supporting African nations towards, they have been raising this kind of issue. The global financial architecture is not supporting Africa. So France really took the initiative to also voice African perspective in this regard. So in December 2024, Macron visited Ethiopia again. In December 2024, President Macron visited Ethiopia while Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed hosted him at the restored National Palace. So whenever a country is supporting you, showing up the friendly relationship, that it has been stay committed to support Ethiopia during the bad and good times, so that Ethiopia pledged that kind of good deeds by France. So the President Macron was received at the renovated National Palace, as you've discussed, and the leaders discussed enhanced cooperation, investment, culture, and education, especially defense cooperation is also the new scheme of cooperation between Ethiopia and France. So I think the current visit would also help enhance all this kind of bilateral relations and multilateral relations between Ethiopia and France.
Of course, this visit by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is significant for a variety of reasons. Exactly. Firstly, Ethiopia is a country situated, in the Horn of Africa, in East Africa, where usually, we have conflict. Ethiopia needs, support for this, and France is, just one of the nations that supports Ethiopia, not only in good days, in good times, but also in bad ones, as you mentioned earlier. And this visit paid by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is expected to bring about, desirable changes in the situation in terms of, for example, security in the Horn of Africa.
Exactly.
As you said, defense is, one of the topics likely, to be discussed between the two leaders. And the other is, as well, Ethiopia does not only have, friends, it has foes, yeah? And the image of the country, for some reason, might be affected by the influence of, just those groups that are not, in good terms with Ethiopia. And especially, Ethiopia's commitment to peace and stability and economic development. And hopefully, just desirable outcomes will be maintained and achieved by this visit.
I think France has remained one of the solid partners of Ethiopia. So, the global hegemonic competition has been, the global geopolitical tension has been on the rise, as you've seen. Many leaders are really, kind of rough situations. You've seen some kind of rough relations sometimes whenever you're looking at the news and something like that. But I think France has remained one of the strong allies of Ethiopia, and France's interest, especially maintaining the regional securities, in terms of ensuring peace and stability in the Horn of Africa, is really immense. So, and I think, like France and Italy, they are the right partners for Ethiopia to ensure for a common agenda in terms of ensuring the peace and security of the Horn of Africa. And I think France is also spearheading in terms of military technologies and advancement. Many many countries are really looking for France whenever they are looking for military and defense cooperation. So Ethiopia is in the right path in this respect. So we're expecting diplomatic outcomes in the near future, because we've been mentioning how much these two countries' leaders has been closely relating each other, and that has been translated in a way that will go and help both countries cooperate in the international arenas, and also bilateral relations between Ethiopia and France. So that's a very interesting diplomatic move that we've seen so far.
Exactly. Habib, I think we can go to the next
items, yes.
Items, and I think the visit to Italy,
yes.
Rome,
yes.
And Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed met with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy.
Exactly.
And of course, I do believe similar issues will be were entertained by the two leaders, or have been entertained by the two leaders so far. And what do you think is special to the kind of discussions the two leaders might have?
Okay, yeah, but Gamachi said, before I come to the Ethio-Italian relations, Prime Minister's meeting with Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. So since the Prime Minister is in Italy, so there is Rome, in the Vatican City. He's been traveling to Vatican cities also, which is one of the smallest cities.
Exactly.
But it's one of the most powerful, because the Catholic Pope is situated in there. So Prime Minister Abiy also visited Vatican Pope Leo XIV. So the Catholic Church in Ethiopia runs lots of schools and hospitals. For example, we have lots of Catholic schools in Addis Ababa. All these schools are run by the Vatican City. That's how a small nation, having a population of 2 million people, located in central Rome, is really helping Ethiopian education system. And Prime Minister Abiy really valued that kind of contribution made by Vatican City and the Pope, the Catholic Church, in terms of backing the Ethiopian education system. And he really visited the Pope. Relation between Ethiopia and Vatican dates back to the 16th century, actually. We have the oldest kind of relationship, and Vatican enhanced its role in education sector, and the Pope also expressed for the Prime Minister that really respects the Ethiopian people and government, and will work in terms of multilateral and bilateral cooperation with Vatican City. And the Pope also expressed that they will go and enhance their education system. That's what Prime Minister also presented a gift for the Pope.
Yes.
That's Ethiopian coffee, which is a very interesting. This is how you symbolize your country's endeavor. Whatever you have, you're just presenting that as a gift. That's a very big meaning in terms of diplomacy. So that's a very interesting visit as well to the Pope. And the Prime Minister also met, as you've said, Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. And the friendly relation between Prime Minister Abiy and Giorgia Meloni starts since both leaders assumes office very close time as well. And such relation is now growing into between the relation of both countries. And in October 2022, Prime Minister Abiy met Giorgia Meloni shortly after she assumes office, focusing on regional peace and security. So that really impacted in the kind of diplomatic relationship that you're following. She was new to the office, so as Prime Minister Abiy shortly she assumes an office, and they've been discussing in terms of ensuring the peace and security of the Horn of Africa.
The cooperation and the bilateral relation between Ethiopia and Italy has been, developing throughout, the years, throughout decades. Italy has also been, a very good friend, support for Ethiopia, both in good and bad days. So, Prime Minister Abiy's visit to Italy will have significance in the future as well. And, well, even though, the exact details have not been reported yet, but we know that economic and development cooperations, have been signed between the two leaders. Discussions were made on these issues. Migration and refugee management is likely to be, just one of the issues, or one of the topics, to have been entertained by the two leaders. Trade and investment is still a point of discussion between the two leaders, and technology. All these, have been, topics that the two leaders have been throughout, these years have been, discussing.
Exactly. Italy is vowed to support Ethiopia in terms of filling all these kind of budget gaps while the country is moving on its macroeconomic reforms. That's why the 260 million euro grant and concessional loan is to be used. The two leaders also reached in consensus to enhance existing trade, investment, and cooperation, as you've said. And Prime Minister also, during his visit to Italy, he also met the Petrosalini We Build company group. You know, Petrosalini is one of the biggest construction company in the world. So they're the one who are constructing the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam as a project contractor. Petrosalini is one part of the We Build group. So Prime Minister Abiy also called upon the other segments of the We Build company to come to Ethiopia and engage in the energy sectors and other investment opportunities, so that government will be helpful in such a way. So, you know, you can see how all this kind of bilateral and multilateral cooperation, especially with the European countries, is really in support of Ethiopia's development agenda. So that's called, you know, a kind of good diplomatic relation that we can see from countries in the European countries. So, you know, such part of the European tour of the Prime Minister is really bearing fruits. Yeah, we can say that.
Yeah. When we think of, you know, energy and infrastructure, you know, we cannot miss Italy. Of course, Prime Minister Meloni also wants to expand, you know, her country's ties with African countries, and Ethiopia is, we can say, on the front. And Ethiopia, of course, needs, you know, technological support, okay, financial supports, you know, from European countries or from any other country, you know, just that is, you know, that has interest to give a hand, that is willing to give a hand, because, you know, we are going through, you know, a huge change in infrastructure development, in economic reform, etc. So Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's visit, especially at this moment, is likely, you know, just to make things right with European countries. So Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's visit is to shed light on Ethiopia's, you know, commitment for peace and for cooperation, you know, with these countries. This time, you know, Ethiopia also wants to strengthen, you know, its cooperation, its ties with European countries, with the West in general. So this particular visit is likely to send a message to European countries that Ethiopia is, of course, you know, a country that wants, you know, a peaceful relationship with any country in the world.
Keep on building relations across the entire world. So, for example, look at all the French and the Italians are doing in Ethiopia. It's just focused on, you know, for example, we've been entertaining all these kind of French fingerprints in terms of preserving Ethiopian cultural heritage. So, in terms of helping the people develop the energy sector, so that will go and help the country uplift from poverty, and economic growth. It will lead to economic growth as well.
Yes, Habib, you're right. I think, you know, time limits us here.
Exactly.
We do hope that our viewers have some insights into the visit of the Prime Minister to France and Rome. Thank you very much for watching. Next time, we'll come up with new episodes. Until then, goodbye.